Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and this is the second part of a two-part full first-round NBA mock draft. As you can see, we did the lottery in the previous video. These are picks 15 through 30 now. I'll put a card in this video for that lottery one. The thumbnail on that video will look exactly like this. If you guys are new to Utility Sports, make sure to subscribe. Like I said, go check out that first round lottery NBA mock draft so that the picks 15 through 30 here makes sense. The video preview is going to break down exactly how the order was determined. And there's a lot of moving pieces right now at this time in the NBA. You know, teams are winning, teams are losing. I believe the Wolves are on a 4-game win streak, or make that a 5-game win streak, excuse me. 4 games in the new year. You know, teams are shifting all about right now in the standings. So it's not always going to be perfectly up to date, especially if you're watching this a couple days after. But for the most part, it's very accurate in terms of the order that we could potentially see at least playing out. So let's jump into it here. Without further ado, pick number 15, the Chicago Bulls here. This pick comes from the Portland Trail Blazers, who at the time I'm actually recording this right now, they're actually on the outside looking in for the playoffs, which you might be asking, well, where are they at 15? Because the lottery order was based on a certain date. So the Bulls here are picking now for the Blazers. This pick is actually lottery protected too, so it's very important this season if the Blazers do or do not make the postseason for the purpose of this pick. Right now, we could essentially say, hey, the Blazers make it through the play-in pathway, which is very possible. Last year, we saw the Pelicans get into the postseason that way. It's very possible the Portland Trail Blazers could as well this year, which would put Chicago on the clock, which is very important because they do not have their own first-round pick. And at pick 15, I have them looking at Michigan's Jett Howard, who has been putting up very impressive numbers this year. And he's actually been a pretty high usage player for them at about 6'8". We've seen him operate in the pick and roll a bit. He's shooting relatively well from three, mid-30s for percentage there. And typically players at his age tend to struggle. Freshmen in college, they typically don't come in and shoot lights out right away. So the fact that he is shooting relatively well is a positive sign. And I think he does a lot of really, really good things with the ball in his hands, which is really where some of the upside here is with this pick. I think one thing that Chicago probably regrets is not drafting Franz Wagner themselves and, you know, letting him essentially be the selection for Orlando from that Nikola Vucevic trade. Here you're getting a Franz Wagner light. I don't think that Jett Howard is necessarily as good as Franz Wagner, but he's a similar archetype. Funny enough, they're both from Michigan as well in terms of where they played their college basketball. So you're kind of getting the 2.0 version here. Now, Franz Wagner, I think, is a little bit more polished. And athletically, I think those two players are very similar. Jett Howard is a very nice option for them here. And he kind of reminds me of Jalen Williams as well, who the Oklahoma City Thunder drafted in the first round in the lottery this past year. He's somebody who likely could make an all-rookie team. So Jett Howard, I think, could have a similar impact early on in his career. Chicago needs more wing options. That's relatively clear to me. I think they could also explore drafting a big man here. But I thought Jett Howard, best talent on the board at this point, somebody who I really considered having go in the lottery earlier on in that lottery mock draft. At pick 15, though, I feel very confident with him being this selection. And then pick 16 gets us to the Phoenix Suns, who are in free fall mode right now. At the time you're watching this, it's very possible the Suns have lost 2, 3, 4 more games since the time I've recorded and potentially have fallen out of the playoff picture, at least at the time being. Of course, a big part of that is Devin Booker missing likely a month here at this point. This team is just not very good without Devin Booker. Of course, you know, the whole point of having Chris Paul is having another ball handler, someone who can run the show when Booker's not available. Well, Chris Paul got a little bit older. He's taken a step back notably, and I think Phoenix right now is kind of hitting the panic button a little bit. So they need a long-term guard, and it just so happens that the perfect one falls to them here with the way that this mock draft played out. Keyonte George from Baylor. What a great young guard that I think he's going to end up becoming. Funny enough, I excluded him from my lottery mock draft, and then the night after, he went and had a career night for himself, scoring, I believe, 27 points for Baylor. And right now he's been a part of a somewhat crowded backcourt for the Bears. You think about guys like LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, Akinjo's also there. Baylor's got a ton of guards. Keyonte George at times has kind of struggled, in my opinion, a little bit more than what I was expecting for him this season, but he's definitely still someone who's a lock to be a top 20 pick. More than likely still could go in the lottery, and if Phoenix does trend that way, I could see Keyonte George being the guy that they select. A few years ago, I thought that they should have drafted Tyrese Halliburton. They ended up passing on him for Jalen Smith. I thought that was a mistake. You can go back to some of those, and you're going to see where I was at with Tyrese Halliburton. I loved him as a prospect. I thought Phoenix really, dropped the ball not drafting him. Of course, we've seen how that's played out here, but they're not going to make that mistake again. They're going to go get a good guard here, Keontae George, and he's going to bridge them to the future. With where Devin Booker's at age-wise, a young player like George who can come in, if he's not A1 from day one, it's okay because they can have, 2 or 3 years of wait time with him. Devin Booker is going to be able to carry the load for a while, and then hopefully Keontae George is his running mate a couple of years from now. The next team now, we have the Los Angeles Clippers at pick 17. The Clippers, very intriguing team for me right now. Of course, they've kind of been hot and cold throughout the season. They've had moments where they're one of the hottest teams in basketball. They climb up the standings, and then there's moments where they can't get a win for 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and then they find themselves dropping in those same standings. So it's very tough right now to pin the Clippers into a specific seed, specific spot in the draft order right now. They're a team with a lot of variance. And I think for the Clippers here, one thing that they're missing is a big man who can consistently fit what Ty Lue's overall goal is and his scheme for this team offensively, which is 5-out, pass and move basketball, and that's Kyle Filipowski's wheelhouse. That's what he does best. He's a big man with a little bit of guard skills. He can handle out in the perimeter. He can shoot the 3 ball. He's a very gifted passer for his size at this time of his development, of course, relative to his age. It's not like he's an NBA level elite passer yet at this point, but given, how players progress, the age point that he's at right now, he's a very, very gifted passer for his size. And I think the Clippers, realistically, at some point, they're going to have to cross a bridge on whether or not they need a power forward to play next to Ivica Zubac and kind of abandon some of the small ball that they play, or they have to really buy into it, and a draft pick at some point has to fit it. We've seen them make some moves like this in the past, drafting guys like Daniel Lechuru, Fiondu Kabengele. Those guys just haven't panned out. I think Kyle Filipowski, though, is a different story here, and somebody that could definitely get the Clippers offense right while still presenting some size and toughness defensively. Pick 18, the Miami Heat here now on the board, and Miami, they're finally getting back on track this season. For most of the year, I was mocking them in the lottery because that's where they were at in the standings, and every single time they were up, I said, hey, look, I don't think this team's going to be a lottery team. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, even Kyle Lowry, who's been pretty shaky in his tenure with Miami. That team's just too good, right? They're not going to be a team that I really see being in the lottery. I'd be pretty surprised by it. And they pulled themselves up to 8th in the Eastern Conference. They've definitely been performing better as of late. And I think Chris Murray's a really great option for them. The one red flag I had about Miami coming into the season was the consistency at the other forward spot next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I thought they needed another front court player, and I was concerned about losing PJ Tucker. Obviously, PJ Tucker's well into his 30s, and for the most part this year, he hasn't been scoring the ball at all for Philadelphia. And, at times offensively looks like one of the worst players in the league. But defensively, the rotations, his toughness, his ability to actually hit the glass and box out, PJ Tucker just kind of messes a lot of things up. And I think Chris Murray has a similar trait to him where he's on the floor and he just makes good things happen for the team he's playing for. But I think he's also taken a really massive step in his actual development in his offensive game this past offseason for Iowa. Last year he was in the shadow of his brother Keegan Murray, who ended up being the 4th overall pick in last year's draft. See, right now at this spot, Chris Murray was someone who had in the radar for the late 20s. I definitely think he's ascended. He's had some monster games for the Hawkeyes this year. He's somebody who has really progressed, not only an outside jump shot, but his ability to handle the ball a little bit. It's not like he's doing it in high volume right now. He's not an all-time go-to player where he's going to face up and score in isolation, but that's not what Miami needs. I also really consider point guard here. I think it's possible Miami explores some stuff at the trade deadline, though. So we'll see exactly what their team looks like a month from now. Post NBA trade deadline, we are just a month away, which I'm very excited for. So I do think that there are some questions to be answered here for Miami, but I think Chris Murray at least solves one of them at the power forward position. Pick 19, New York Knicks here now. Jalen Brunson has been balling out this year, scored a career high 44 points for them. The night I'm recording this, he's looked awesome all season long. I think Jalen Brunson is one of the more underrated players in the NBA still to this day. I wouldn't say underpaid, but underrated across fans, most definitely. And I think the Knicks at this spot, there's a lot of talent on this team. Actually, you look at them, there's a ton of depth. There's actual quality NBA players. Tom Thibodeau is clearly starting to prioritize defense again, like he typically has throughout his coaching career. And he's doing it to the point where guys like Miles McBride are playing over Evan Fournier, Cam Reddish, and it's definitely a good move. And it's a move that, I'm glad Tom Thibodeau is making, because if he's going to put his job on the line, if there's going to be rumors about him getting fired, he better go out the way that he wants to, and I don't think he'll get fired at all. The Knicks are playing relatively well this year, as indicated by being out of the play-in right now. And the guy that I think should be on the radar is an athletic scorer in Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine. Welcome to the first round, Maxwell Lewis. He had a lot of buzz to start the year after a few big performances, and I was like kind of hesitant about, okay, is he going to be able to keep this up? So I've been watching him, and it's been very well sustained. He's averaging a ton of points this year, and he's doing it on really good efficiency as well. He's shooting above 50% on two-pointers as a wing combo guard, and he's also shooting above 42% on threes. So Maxwell Lewis, welcome to the first round. He's not going to be going anywhere for any time soon. He's a legit scorer of the basketball, and I think New York, even though they are taking that preference to defense, they still, in my opinion, when it comes to postseason time, need somebody who can really be about a bucket. I think that they have a few of those guys right now that can go out and find you buckets in Jalen Brunson, in Julius Randle, in RJ Barrett. But I think the one concern I have is all of those guys seem more opportunistic when it comes to scoring. For Jalen Brunson, he'll get you out of position with some pivots, and he's crafting the way he finds buckets. Julius Randle's going to muscle through you. And RJ Barrett's going to catch on swings and dive to the rim and make some good plays when opportunities present themselves. The issue with that, though, is I just feel like they need things to go right for those guys to score. They need to get guys out of position or, catch them a certain way. Maxwell Lewis has true natural scoring talent, which I think is what is kind of lacking right now in New York. I hope that this is a really good fit for them, and I think that he could present some really good offensive capabilities for a team that, in my opinion, still needs a little bit of it next to their already really good core. Pick 20, the Sacramento Kings here now, and let's just take a second to applaud the Sacramento Kings. They've been playing really, really good basketball this year. Domas Sabonis is one of the toughest guys in the NBA, as indicated by playing through his hand and finger injuries right now, playing with a splint. Kevin Huerter's been a phenomenal fit off of Sabonis, which I think is one of the things we would have really seen take a tick backward if Sabonis did miss extended time, as I think Huerter's production would have went drastically down. De'Aaron Fox is playing like an all-star guard this year in the West, which is awesome to see as well. The Kings are playing really great. I don't even think Keegan Murray's played as well as he's capable of yet either, just given the fact that he's a young rookie who's taken really high. I think that there's still room for him to take a couple steps forward. But to add into this team, I still think that they need a little bit more wing help. Harrison Barnes, an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. I think the Kings are an interesting team for us to keep our eyes on this trade deadline. Are they going to be comfortable extending Harrison Barnes at this point? I'm a little shaky on that, just given his age and, the fact that they're going to have to commit money to both Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox within the next couple of years. It's kind of a red flag concern for me. So for Sacramento, they got to get ahead of this early. They've got to find a good lengthy wing here in Ryan Rupert, playing for the New Zealand Breakers of the NBL. He's French-born, and he's a really, really solid wing prospect, in my opinion. He's able to put the ball in the deck. He's really progressed using his left hand in the last year and a half. He's very comfortable attacking left. Actually, just the other day, I ended up breaking Luke Travers out in the NBL, someone who's a Cleveland Cavaliers draft and stash player. He broke him and got to the rim, put it all over social media. Ryan Rupert has been playing really good basketball for the Breakers this season. He's averaging over 7 points a game, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but for how young he is and playing in a pro league, it is rather, good. He's shooting around 40% from the field, which doesn't sound great, but over his last 4 games, he's shooting around 60%. So he's taking strides forward. He's adjusting to the pro game right now, and I think he's somebody who is going to be a pretty nice pickup for the Kings, and they're very happy to be picking in the 20s. For the first time in my actual life as someone who's a basketball scout, really watching these players, is the first time I've really ever talked about the Kings outside of the lottery. So it's an awesome sight for me. It's an awesome sight for Kings fans, and the Beam team's been winning, so shout out to them. Pick 21, the Indiana Pacers. Man, what a win-win trade, right? Tyrese Halliburton's kind of changed the entire direction and story around the Indiana Pacers. I still think that they got the better of that deal, but very happy for how everything's played out for Sacramento as well. Those two teams both in better situations now than they were 12 months ago, and that's really kind of the point of making a trade like that. You shake up your franchise and you hope that you shake off some of that rust, you shake off some of the issues, and you find good winning basketball. That's what both of these teams have done just less than a year after making a big blockbuster trade. And I think for Indiana, the one thing that they've really missed after losing Domantas Sabonis is rebounding. This team just does not rebound that well. They rank bottom 5 in defensive rebound percentage this year in the NBA. They also give up a plethora of second chance points because of this. So I have them going out and getting Noah Clowney from Alabama. And of course, Brandon Miller's stolen a lot of the spotlight there for the Crimson Tide, and very deservingly so. He was obviously featured in my lottery portion of this mock draft. But Noah Clowney, two-time SEC Freshman Player of the Year, he's been hitting the glass regularly, averaging just a hair under 10 points a game right now. But he's a specialist when it comes to getting on the glass. He's averaging around 8 rebounds a game. His per 40 minutes, which are very important to look at in terms of his actual ability to hit the glass and how much you could expect that throughout the entire duration of a college game, is over 13 rebounds a game right now per 40 minutes. So he's been very, very productive when he's been on the floor, hitting the glass hard. He's a good physical threat. And like I said, he's been accomplished already in his short time in the SEC playing for Alabama, 2-time SEC Freshman Player of the Week. So shout out to Noah Clowney. I think he solved some of the issues here Indiana has, looking for a little bit more physicality in the front court, a guy who knows how to finish around the rim, but most importantly can hit the glass hard. Pick 22, the Knicks, back on the board again here. Now after earlier making a selection, they find themselves on the board again with this pick from the Dallas Mavericks. And it's a really good opportunity here for the Knicks to make a move. I don't think that they'll likely pick with this selection come draft night, just looking at their recent moves history. Leon Rose has been very aggressive in moving out of draft selections to accrue more future draft selections and really build up his treasure chest of assets that he could look to move in deals. Of course, that's why they were rumored around Donovan Mitchell so heavily, because he makes a lot of moves during draft night. But let's say they do keep this pick. I think a guy that makes a lot of sense, another scorer here as a guard, Terquavion Smith from NC State. Again, likely this pick gets moved, but I think Terquavion Smith's having a really, really good sophomore season for himself. It was possible he could have been a first-round pick last year, decided to go back to NC State to play for the Wolfpack. Obviously, Darian Sebron did not return to the Wolfpack, so he's kind of been there doing it himself, and he's been very efficient this year. He's significantly improved, and now I think there's zero chance he's not a first-round pick in this year's draft, at least at this stage of the season. He's been very, very good all year long. He's able to create off of a live dribble. He's somebody who can shoot going left and right. He's rather athletic for a very thin, wiry frame. I think he's a good NBA player when it's all said and done, probably more of a sixth-man role. So if you're the Knicks here, this could be another option for them in terms of adding scoring punch, this time behind Jalen Brunson coming off the bench. But with the way that some of the other bench players for the Knicks have played this year, again, I think this pick could very likely get moved on draft night. Pick 23, the Brooklyn Nets here now. And with Kevin Durant, of course, sustaining an injury, I am a little concerned for this team. This pick comes from the 76ers. They actually have the rights to the more favorable pick between the 76ers and the Nets pick from that Royce O'Neal trade. They're going to trade to the Utah Jazz the least favorable of the picks between the Jazz, 76ers, and Nets. So at this point, the Nets do get this pick here. Pick 28 will be going to the Utah Jazz. As I discussed, and Khalil Ware's an option here for them that I think that they at least have to explore. He was a McDonald's All-American, true freshman at Oregon this season. He's having a pretty solid year coming off the bench for them. Now, the one concern around him is he's shooting about 44% from the field. And you might say, well, that's not very good for a big man. He is shooting above 50% on two-pointers, so it's not as big of a red flag as I think that 44% would kind of raise. but he is exploring his three-point shot a little bit, which is a big positive. I like to see freshmen willing to take the step out and shoot a couple three-pointers. Now, you need to have a good understanding of when and when not to, and that comes with some situational awareness that I think he'll get, a little bit better at as his career progresses. But it's a positive sign to see him shooting. He's shooting around 30% from three on those attempts right now. So it's not been great, but it's at least an inkling that this guy could take some steps forward. And if you watch Nets basketball, you just know this team is small. I love some of the pieces on this team, specifically Nick Claxton. I'm a big Nick Claxton fan. I think that defensively, he offers you a lot of different versatility that other bigs in this league don't. And I think Khalil Ware offers you some of the same. The issue with Khalil Ware, just like Claxton, they're both relatively thin. So you're not really improving the way that you want to as much, but it's hard to find a good quality big who can give you minutes early on in their career in the 20s. It's just not something that consistently comes around. And if they were, they go way before pick 20, which is why we've seen some other big men already off the board here. But I think Khalil Ware still an option that the Nets should explore taking at this pick. Pick 24, the Los Angeles Lakers now on the clock. This pick comes from the New Orleans Pelicans. The Lakers actually owe swap rights to the Pelicans this year. So the Pelicans were picking in the lottery using the Lakers selection, but the Lakers are hot right now. This team's actually winning some games. LeBron James playing very, very well. Russell Westbrook, probably the favorite to win Sixth Man of the Year. So the Lakers have kind of figured out some things that are going to be long-term beneficial for them to win games. And I think adding a player like Arthur Kaluma from Creighton is another really good long-term addition for them. I've been very harsh on Rob Pelinka. One thing that he does relatively well is draft in the 20s and later. He's found some really nice gems around this area and a little bit later on in the draft. And I think Arthur Kaluma is a really good example of this. Earlier in the year, he got a lot of social media hype and love for hitting a sham god during a game and leading to a really nice finish around the rim. Kaluma is a talented player, but I think defensively really is where you see some of that upside. He's got a very good lengthy wingspan. He's got good height for the position as a true wing in this league. He's about 6'7", 6'8". So he's got the prototypical size. He's got the wingspan to match. And he's also somebody who is growing offensively with his skill set. Last year in March Madness, he really started to implement himself during Ryan Kalkbrenner's absence during the tournament. Kaluma had to step up big time, actually won them the game in the round of 64 and looked pretty good in the round of 32 as well. So Arthur Kaluma is the guy I'm really buying hype into. I think he's a really nice solid wing. The Lakers don't have a lot of those right now. Kaluma makes a lot of sense landing with the Lakers. Pick 25, the Indiana Pacers on the board again. They have 3 first-round picks. I'd be surprised if they keep all 3 of them past either the trade deadline or on the night of the draft. If they use all 3, I'd be kind of surprised if they don't trade out of at least one of these picks. But with 25 here, this is one I don't think that they should at all consider trading out of. Dillon Mitchell, Texas Longhorns forward, one of the most intriguing prospects in the draft for me. And I know there's a lot of disappointment right now with the way that Dillon Mitchell's played this year. At Montverde Academy, he worked specifically off the ball, I would say about 98% of the time. And he was very, very good at it. He's extremely athletic. Every time he jumps, you think that there's springs in his shoes because the way he gets up, it just doesn't look natural. He's got really springy bounce to him, and he knows what to do when he's up there too. He's very, very good at finishing around the rim. I think Ben Simmons-esque a little bit in terms of the athletic profile and the ability to finish around the rim. Of course, Ben Simmons took a big step back from that the last couple of years. But for the most part, you know what you're getting here, right? Very athletic player, can work off the baseline. Now, some people are really bummed because they wanted to see him take a big step forward in terms of what role he was playing in at Texas. And that's not what's happened here. In fact, he's actually maybe even playing a little bit more of a reserve role-playing type role. But that's kind of what I like about him. And I know this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but think about guys coming into the NBA. A lot of the time, they have to learn to adjust to a new role. And sometimes that's why players don't fit in a new role, because they've never been asked to do that. A lot of the players that get drafted have been focal points of an offense. They've been guys who play with the ball in their hands. Now you're asking them to not. Dillon Mitchell, it's very clear here, especially landing in Indiana for a team that needs more forward help, more front court help around some of their nice players already. You already have Tyrese Halliburton who's going to be running the show. Benedict Matherin's going to be one of your main on-ball creators for the long-term future. You need players who can complement those guys. And this is where Dillon Mitchell, I think, makes a ton of sense for any team just outside of the lottery. To be honest with you, I would really consider taking this guy even in the back end of the lottery if I have the right pieces on my team. And I know this is going to sound crazy to people, but when you have someone this athletic, this guy can be very disruptive defensively, and offensively, there's no learning curve for him. He's going to be able to come in right away. He's going to cut off of the baseline. This is a significantly better Jared Vanderbilt, and Jared Vanderbilt's a starting level player in the NBA. He's been very productive for the Utah Jazz this year. And if Dillon Mitchell can progress as a jump shooter, it's wraps. This kid's going to be really, really good without the basketball in his hands. If he becomes a little bit more of a spot-up threat, he's going to be a really dangerous piece to add to a team who's already pretty good here in Indiana. Any team in the 20s picking, they're going to have a shot maybe at Dillon Mitchell, and I think it's going to be something that teams in the lottery maybe regret letting him fall that far. I love his upside. I love his athleticism. I don't think he'll ever be an on-ball creator, and I'm all in for it. I like what he does off the ball, and I think there's a lot of benefits to adding him, especially when you consider, not every single bucket throughout the course of a game is a polished pick and roll, right? There's balls that get knocked loose and, players end up getting offensive rebounds. Dillon Mitchell does a lot of those things where, it's maybe not pretty all the time, but it's productive and it puts points on the board. And I think that's what Dillon Mitchell is going to do throughout his career. Pick 26, the Houston Rockets here now on the board. This pick comes from the Milwaukee Bucks, who they've been a little up and down as of late, a little bit less steady than what you'd expect from Milwaukee. But from Houston, this team's really young right now, and this is their second first-round pick. To be honest, I think that they should explore trading this selection to see if they can bring in a solid veteran, even if that means a sign and trade. If you have to do something out there to get a good player in your locker room that can help some of those young guys progress, Austin Rivers, I think, said it best. Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, those two guys are very talented scorers of the basketball. Right now, I don't think that they know how to win. And, that's something that they can learn over time. But I think having good positive influences who also play a really good role in winning can go a really long way in helping those guys get to where they're supposed to be. Now, at this pick, you're not going to find one of those, right? At pick 26, you're not going to get a young or, a veteran player in the NBA drafting, right? But I think one thing that they could still use is a little bit more defensive presence. And I think this is a pretty fun scenario that could potentially play out if they do keep this pick. Jabari Smith, the upsides on him were length, versatility defensively. He's going to be able to challenge inside and out defensively. Well, let's go get another guy like that. Baba Miller here, 6'11" wing with a 7'3" plus wingspan. Now he's from Spain, played in Real Madrid throughout high school. Baba Miller is a very intriguing player. I know Rockets fans are going to say, whoa, we already have Usman Garuba. We don't need any more Spanish players here. Trust me on this. Baba Miller is a very fun, intriguing prospect. He has not played a college game yet at the time I'm recording this because of some issues with the NCAA regarding his eligibility. Just given where he's from, I think that there was a few issues that they needed to work out between Florida State and the NCAA, but he is cleared to play now. And I think he's going to be someone who stays in this first-round relevancy. I really liked him before the year. The fact that he hasn't played yet, though, has pegged him down a few slots, but I'm not ready to say he's a second-round pick or later. I do really like the long-term upside here. I think Florida State, with Leonard Hamilton as the head coach, is going to teach him some really, really good basketball lessons, especially about team defense, which I think the Houston Rockets need to take some steps in. Last year, they ranked dead last. This year, they're, I believe, in the bottom 5. Still when it comes to team defensive numbers. So you need some length, you need some versatility. Baba Miller gives you a lot of that. And I really think the idea of Jabari Smith and Baba Miller sharing the floor together, maybe next to Alperen Şengün, Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, it's a really good combination of skill and length that I think could present some good challenges as well when it comes to both offense and defense. Pick 27, the Memphis Grizzlies here now. This team's really prioritized keeping their long-term flexibility. They're a team that I think is a sleeping giant waiting to make a big trade at some point. Doesn't mean they're going to give up all their picks, all their swaps in something big, but one or two firsts could net you a lot in this market right now, especially given kind of what's available. You could maybe go out and get some really important players. Assuming they keep this pick, though, I really like Bryce Sensabaugh from Ohio State, somebody who I don't think was on the radar of a lot of people as a first-round pick coming into this season. For me, I was kind of firmly on him as a middle of the second round guy. He's playing well above that grade right now. Pick 27 maybe even feels a little bit low for him. As a true freshman at Ohio State, he's kind of assumed the same role that last year we saw Malachi Branham in. He's been kind of their wing ball creator for this Buckeyes team, and he's done a pretty good job of it. Now, one concern I do have for him, what does that three-point shooting look like in the NBA? Because he's been a little spotty and inconsistent this year from three, but anyone who watches him knows he loves that left elbow. If he can get to his spots in the mid-range area, he's very tough to stop. He's got very good touch around the rim and in those mid-range spots like I talked about. So he's got the shooter's touch. He's somebody who I think could develop and progress as a shooter from deep. I just think he's going to need a lot of reps to get there. And for Memphis, you're not asking this kid to play, 20, 30 minutes for you year one. This is one of the deepest teams in the NBA. This becomes a little bit of a development project. Maybe see him with the Memphis Hustle a little bit year one, which ultimately is what I would think to be best for Bryce Sensabaugh long term. I think he's somebody who has a first round grade on him, but probably won't start playing like a first round player for a year or two after coming into the NBA. I think spot minutes are going to be really important for him. And Memphis blows out enough teams that they're going to give opportunities for him to play some actual NBA games as well. I think this is one of the best landing spots for him in the draft, specifically given the fact that he's got a good frame, good size to him, and Dillon Brooks. I think there's a real question right now about his long-term future in Memphis, just given his contract status. Pick 28, the Utah Jazz here. Now, this pick comes from the Brooklyn Nets. Remember, the Jazz received the lowest pick between the 76ers and Nets pick from that trade for Royce O'Neal. And I just want to give a lot of credit real quick to the Brooklyn Nets. They have playing really, really great basketball. So the Utah Jazz here, definitely not happy to see that this pick falls because of that. And they've not been playing great basketball themselves. They've actually been losing a good amount of games this year, but this is their third first-round pick in this year's draft. And, I'll give them a puncher's chance, especially Jordan Clarkson, to make something happen here. So pick 28, Derek Lively, center from Duke, that I had very high expectations of coming into the season. I thought potentially could become a top 10 draft pick this year. And due to, some issues early on in the season in terms of his availability, kind of missed some time in practice and games to begin the year. He never really got accustomed to what was going on, never got acclimated into the system, and he's underwhelmed this year for someone who's a top 10 recruit coming into Duke, part of the best recruiting class in the nation this year. He's been disappointing. I think Utah long-term needs some serious help in terms of length, size, rim protection. Those are the things that Derek Lively is going to give you. He's very athletic. He's somebody who you put the ball up in the air, he's probably going to find a way to come down with it. Almost built like an NFL receiver in that regard, with his skill set to go up and get the ball when you need him to. Gives you a nice safety blanket for your guards who are attacking the rim. You just toss the ball up and you got a lob threat right there. Derek Lively's very, very adept at finishing those lobs, and he's got the athleticism to be a problem on the glass and as a shot blocker. I think, though, the issue is he's kind of got some of the same flaws as James Wiseman in terms of he needs more minutes on the floor, he needs more game-like reps, and he's somebody who can find himself out of position from time to time. So those are things that Utah and Will Hardy's going to have to do a really good job to break out of him. But like I said, the talent, the athleticism, it's all there. You just need to find ways to unlock it and really turn it into a good basketball player. And I think that's what Derek Lively could be at the NBA level with the right development, with the right long-term approach. Pick 29, the Charlotte Hornets here. Now, this pick comes from the Denver Nuggets in a move a few years ago. Charlotte at this spot, this team's not very good, to be honest with you. They picked second in the lottery version of this mock draft, and I'm very underwhelmed with Charlotte this season. LaMelo Ball's making 4+ 3-pointers a game this year. Kudos to him for that, but this team's just not winning games. And I think part of that, they're missing good wing play. Of course, the whole Miles Bridges situation has been a nightmare for them. Definitely not what they wanted to have happen when it comes to their team building, which is why I think they are exploring bringing him back. As a topic I don't really want to get into too much in this video, though. So I'm looking at another option. Jordan Walsh, he has dunked the ball a ton this year for for Arkansas, the Razorbacks there. He's been a really nice wing option for them. He's highly athletic. I remember seeing clips of this kid when he was 15, 16 years old, dunking from, a step or two inside the free throw line. He's got that type of bounce to him, something that they are missing from Miles Bridges. I think they need someone who can put the pressure a little bit more pressure on the rim next to LaMelo Ball, and some athleticism to kind of hide some of LaMelo's deficiencies on both ends of the floor. I think somebody like this, who is a natural cutter, this year playing off of guys like Nick Smith Jr., Anthony Black, he's got all those little traits that you're looking for putting next to playmakers, which is what I envisioned Charlotte having, especially with who I had them select second overall. I think Jordan Walsh is a very intriguing option for them here. Then pick 30, the final pick here of the first round. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video up to this point. If you have, please leave a like on it. It would mean a lot. And I have the Indiana Pacers using the Celtics pick to go with Leonard Miller. If you can't tell, for Indiana right now, I'm looking for rebounding, wings, upside. That's kind of what we're finding here. And Leonard Miller, gives you two really good options in that, of the wing player and the upside. I think he's somebody who could really develop into a solid playmaker at the NBA level. I watched his film a year ago, and I studied this player very intensely leading up to the NBA draft combine that he actually did participate in before deciding to, play in the G League for a year before actually coming out for the NBA draft. He needed a ton of development. He was extremely raw. He could not beat anyone off of a live dribble. His jump shot was extremely inconsistent, and some of those flaws are still there. I think he's somebody who is very reliant on catching guys out of position to be able to actually drive the basketball. He's also somebody who commits a ton of offensive fouls, even if they're not called, by using his arm to kind of shove off guys and chicken wing them to get around tight corners. He's not fully polished. Okay, he's gonna be playing for the Mad Ants for at least a year if the Pacers draft him, but he's a long-term option with some good playmaking feel, and that's what you're drafting this kid for. He's about 6'8", and he knows how to handle the ball a little bit, even though right now he's not getting to a ton of spots with it. He knows how to put the ball between his legs. He's got very good ball security in that regard when actually working off of a live dribble, and he at times has flashed some significant playmaking feel. Back when he's playing FIBA U19, he's tossing the ball behind his back in real game situations, making on-point passes in transition, and you can tell he sees what's supposed to happen. So that's what you're selling yourself here on at pick 30. Now, do I think it's enough for him to become a good NBA player in his career? Probably not. This is a mock draft, not a big board. I don't necessarily think Leonard Miller's a first-round player myself, but I could see a team like Indiana here, who this is their third first-round pick. They could say, let's swing for the fences here. Maybe Leonard Miller turns into something really, really good. I think there is a pathway for that to happen, but I think more likely than not, he's not that good of an NBA player. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please leave a like on this video. Subscribe for more future content as well. It'd mean a lot to have you guys sticking around here on the channel. And then also turn on the notification bell. Don't ask you to do that a lot. Let me know in the comment section right now if you're part of Noti Gang or not. I would love to have you guys get updated whenever we post a new video. There's going to be a lot of NBA draft content coming up over the next few months, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Thanks again so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.